One of those days where we're marking stuff off the list. Just kind of going through and just marking stuff off the list. And as usual, I'm trying to mark off the easy jobs first. Marking stuff off the list.
I'd say it's a nut job.
One of the first things I'm going to do today is pull a spark plug out. Should have been one of the first things done when we started fiddling with this thing, but it wasn't. It crunk up so easily that I never went back and looked at it. So I want to pull a plug and just take a look at it and see what it tells us about the health of the motor and how it's running. A couple little minor things we want to do. Plus I want the plug out to see what plug it's actually running so we can get some new plugs for it, because judging by, the oil filter and things like that, I'd say this thing hadn't had a tune-up since probably the 80s or maybe the 90s at the latest. So we're gonna kind of love on her a little. Woo. $45. It's actually running a Autolite 45 plug, which is a common plug that I use in FEs. Where's the camera at? There it is. Autolite 45. That's a common plug I use in all the FEs, so it's nice to know. But yeah, that plug there, I honestly would be shocked if that thing's firing. You know what I mean? But it obviously is, because it's running. This is heavily fouled and like soaked in gasoline. So yeah, it definitely tells me that it needs plugs. No matter what, it needs plugs. Part of the beauty of being kind of a hoarder of parts, not that you would, notice that or anything. Part of the beauty of that is you kind of have stuff laying around. It makes it easier to do something like this on a budget, and I mean a real budget. Let's look at what we have invested so far into this thing. So to get it up and running, clean the carburetor out. I didn't put any money into it. When I took the top off the carburetor, the gasket was still perfect, not a tear in it. I just cleaned it out, put it back together, zero investment. This radiator right here, this is the radiator that was in Wayland when I upgraded to the aluminum radiator in Wayland. This radiator was literally sitting on the side of the shop, probably was going to end up getting tossed in the scrap pile for scrap copper. Nothing wrong with it, just didn't have any use for it. So, free radiator, zero investment. The truck, to get it up and running, we had this old clickety-clackety fuel pump here, and it had died. It just wasn't no good. This thing has I got to looking at the fuel pump that was on the side of it, and it looked very similar to a fuel pump from an FE motor. Took it off, and it is the exact same fuel pump from an FE motor. The beautiful thing about that is, I tear down a lot of FE motors. So I have bins full of parts over there for motors I tear down. I had a fuel pump over there, but the fuel pump on it is $0. What else have we actually done to this thing? Now, where money was spent is power disc brake conversion, disc brake conversion kit, and the power brakes money was spent there, of course. But no matter what the future of this truck is, well, it's going to be driven, so it needs to be able to stop and be safely and efficiently. And so that was money that needed to be spent. Here's the thing. We haven't ran this Y block more than just around the yard, so we really don't know the condition of it. It may take a dump on us after it runs down the road a few miles, or it may run 20 years. So until we know, we can use our old junky parts on the motor, get the motor up and running around town. If everything seems fine, then that's when you can start replacing parts with better parts. But there's no reason to spend $1,000 just to see if something's good, when you can pretty much invest zero money into it and see if it's good. Now, the spark plugs, since they are Autolite 45s, I'm gonna poke around. I tend to have a bunch of plugs right there. I'm gonna poke around and see if I have some 45s in stock. If I do, then again, a zero investment. Plug wire right here is a set of fairly new plug wires, and these are good plug wires. Real good plug wires. These ain't the little cheapy plug wires. Those came from a distributor cap that was on, my buddy has a old Thunderbird. We done a MSD style ignition upgrade to it, and we had not long before tuned the car up. So that distributor cap and wires and all, I stuffed them away in my little parts bin. I pulled my inner Fred Sanford out and stuffed them away. So now the plug wires that was on his Thunderbird, whoop, right onto the unibody. Again, they're good plug wires. There was nothing wrong with them. We just upgraded it to an MSD style distributor. So now I have plug wires for that, and I believe, if my eyes don't deceive me, if you look right here, Autolite 45s. So I have plugs in stock, as long as that's not a empty box. Anyway, so yeah, we'll be able to do a fresh tune-up on this thing, and once again put $0 into it. If you want to know real budget stuff, this is real budget stuff. This is how a man with no money can really get something put together. You just have to have a little inner Fred Sanford in you. Now, I'm not saying these plugs wasn't part of Christopher Columbus's tune-up kit that he carried on the Mayflower, but they're all still new in the box, regardless of how old they are. And I've got 2, 4, I've got 6 of them right there. And I'll dig through the rest of my boxes of plugs up there and see if I've got any more of these up there. So I was able to find another whole box of these that hadn't been opened until I popped them open, and the old box is kind of brittle, but the plugs are brand new. And these plugs actually come from a kind of a special place, so it'll be an honor to get to use these plugs. And then of course we've got the wires right here that come off the T-Bird. We did buy a new oil filter. Don't panic on me. We bought a new oil filter. So we've already changed the oil, and now since I've managed to dig through my parts and find these old plugs and plug wires, by the way, those plugs, those came from Mr. Gene Cromer's place. If you don't know the history of Mr. Gene Cromer, he was a racing legend. Anyway, 8 of the plugs that come from Mr. Gene Cromer's place will be going into this motor now. Again, they're brand new plugs. They're just a vintage plug. Matter of fact, I seen some of these on eBay in this box here, where they were trying to part them out and listing them as vintage Autolite plugs. Man, it's not like there's an expiration date on the box, you know what I mean? So a good plug's a good plug. So they're going to be going in here now, and then those plug wires are going in here, and honestly, we'll call her tuned up. As a kid growing up, I'm sure if anybody's close to my age and they're Their dad was a car guy. Probably have very similar memories. But growing up as a kid to a car guy, setting the gap on the plugs is one of those things you just did it. It didn't matter. I remember when we first started hearing people talk about, well, the plugs come pre-gapped. You don't have to worry about it. Well, growing up, my old man wasn't going to have none of that. That was one of those things where, no, you gap your plugs. You don't rely on somebody to factory to gap your plugs. You gap your plugs yourself. So these days we understand a little bit more about plug gaps and how we can alter them a little bit and change the performance of the engine. Not drastically, but kind of just one of those little things that you can do. And but back in the day, you gapped every plug, and a lot of it had to do with the type of ignition system. As we've moved away from points, the gaps have changed and stuff. You want a little more gap and all with modern ignition than you do with points, and that's just part of the game. But I'm sitting here having memories of my old man while I'm doing this and gapping these plugs and thinking about him going, set them about 35. That'll be all right. They'll run good on that. Yeah, just set them about 35. So, in honor of the old man today, we're setting the plug gap here on about 35. Thereabouts, 35. It'll run good. 32 to 35 be all right. Somebody at some point in time is at least taking a couple of these plugs out, because some of them are barely over finger tight and some of them are barely under your nuts hitting the floor tight. These plugs are rough. These Gene Cromer spark plugs are gonna fix us right up. They're gonna fix us right up. Again, the only thing we've actually put any money into is the braking system. And here's basically the 100,000 foot view of why. The truck had nothing on it for brakes. Nothing. And we're going to have to put brakes on it no matter what. Well, if the ultimate goal is make this truck roadworthy and drive it no matter what, well, might as well spend money on the brakes and be done with those. If there's something wrong with the engine, we can pull the engine out, repair it, or put another engine in. But the brakes stay with the truck no matter what. So it made sense to go ahead and spend the money on the brakes now. Let me lay these plugs out. I got a bar back here. I'm gonna lay them out on this bar, and I'll let you look at these plugs, and you can see exactly what we were working with. All right, front to rear. Closest to the front of the truck, all the way at the back of the truck, driver's side, just so there's no confusion. First observation right off the bat, you can tell that this plug right here is a brand new plug. I mean, just look at it. It's a new plug. And now if we look at the plugs, this plug was a little fouled, but not terrible, because again, it hadn't been in there very long. This plug right here is saturated in oil. Now, I'm not terribly alarmed at that, because if you've seen the oil that come out of this thing, I'm just gonna call it black water. It was the thinnest oil I've ever seen in my life. This one has a little oil on it, and so does this one, but this one's far worse. This one, there's a little bit, but not much. I don't know how long this plug's been in there. I would say not terribly long. Somebody put that plug in there right before we got the truck, I'd say, and it's just been sitting there. But you can see all the plugs. Take this plug out of the equation because it is an anomaly. But here, all the plugs look fairly consistent. You'll see they have the same color tone to them, the same. The straps look the same. Everything looks the same with the exception of this one has a little more oil deposit on it than these do. Again, at this point, it doesn't really alarm me at all, just because of how thin the oil was. So I'm not really worried about the oil itself, but it looks like they were consistent. Now, a lot of people will give you some misleading information when they look at plugs. They will look at them and go, ooh, this thing was doing this, this is doing this. Look at how the plugs are. I'm not concerned as much at how the plugs themselves look as I am with how consistent the plugs are. I want to see all the plugs looking very similar to each other. That tells me that everything is, you know, let's use the term evenly worn, or however you want to put it, but all the cylinders are the same. If I see one plug that is extremely one way or the other, there's something going on in that hole in there that's different than the others. And usually that's a sign of a problem with that particular hole. So you want them all to be consistent. And all of them that on the driver's side of this engine is absolutely consistent. That you couldn't ask for any better than that. So that's good. And the fact that they are as junky looking as they are, I'm going to say something and then you're going to have to give me a minute to unpack it. But it's good that they're as nasty and as junky looking as they are, because that means the engine's got no choice but to run better now. And it already ran pretty doggone good. Okay, I have all my spark plugs in my patented pending spark plug holding device that you'll be able to purchase on our website when I have a website to put stuff on. No, it's actually just a box that the master cylinder came in and I poked holes in it. But I'm gonna get out here in the sunlight so you can see really good these plugs. Again, front of the engine, passenger side, driver side. And let's just look at these plugs. You can see, maybe the light's worse out here, I don't know. You can see these plugs are virtually all identical except for the one right here in my thumb that's the anomaly because it's a new plug. Okay, I'm like a gremlin. I like low light anyway. I think things show up better. I'm going to use my fancy high-end pointer here and do some pointing. This one right here is the anomaly. It's a new plug, a newer plug. It's been changed at some point in time, so it doesn't have the run life on it that all of the other 7 do. So if we go through here and look at them individually, we can see they're all pretty consistent. They're all pretty fouled. They all have the same oil deposits on them. They all have gas on them. They're all pretty evenly fouled. There really is no one plug that's way different than all the rest of them. So that's a good thing. As I was saying earlier, I'm happy that they're all equally crappy. That means that the engine doesn't have one cylinder performing differently than any of the others. The only exception to that is the one plug that was changed on the driver's side front. Now we can't get an accurate reading on that plug. The fact that this plug has been recently changed, we can't really get any firm data on that hole. But I'm going to say, because the other 7 are so consistent with no variation between them that we can tell, that one's going to be just as good, because it was kind of getting crappy too. You know, it's not like it was just perfectly clean, or you know, it was way beyond the others or anything. It was kind of trending toward what the others was doing, and we don't know how long that plug's been in there. All right, so now we got to do what we got to do here. we get the cross one off. We've done the plugs. I haven't done the wires yet, I will. So we still got to do the rest of the brake stuff, which is all here, the hoses and lines and brake fluid and bleed the brakes. And we still got to do the pulley and belt and get the coil mounted in the proper place. It's just laying on the back of the motor right now. There's a gas tank, and I want to do a new thermostat in it in the fuel line. And then we're ready to ride. If everything else on that list goes as smoothly as some of the rest of the stuff has, we'll be ready to ride before long. I am currently in the waiting process for the fuel tank, the fuel line. What else am I waiting on? A couple radiator hoses and some brake line, I think. I'm not waiting on much. A couple of little things that I'm in a holding pattern waiting on, but it allows me to tinker around and continue moving forward with some of these other things, like the plugs and wires and the little dress-up kit you see on the engine. We get to move forward with some of these things that need to be done, and we're getting extremely close to this thing being ready to go back on the road. Okay, up here I'm in a parts hold. I need to run to town at least. Fan, pulley, so that is just laid on there because I don't have bolts long enough to go through the spacer and the pulley. I don't have a belt for it. I don't have the brake line stuff. I don't have the fuel tank. I'm still using this. I don't have the fuel line. Water hoses connect to the radiator. I don't have this stuff yet. Some of this is a quick run to town. The belts and bolts and all that, I run to town and get that. Yes, this is a clutch fan on it. Yes, I know they did not have this on it, but keep in mind what we are doing. Putting as little money into this thing as we can till we know that it is healthy. And the clutch fan will work. Yeah, they rob a little power, but they'll work. They'll cool the motor. It'll go down the road. It'll allow us to check all the rest of the systems. Something that you should consider when you think about the parts that I'm using is this. We will have less in this entire truck than most people have in wheels and tires. And it's because we are willing to use some out of the ordinary parts. Used fuel pump, it works. Old plugs that I have here that were new in the box, they were just old plugs. A set of wires off another project, they were new wires, they were just off another project. But what I'm saying is, think about things around you. If you're truly on a tight budget and you just need your ride to go, truth be told, that is a clutch fan off a Chevrolet truck. 3 things about that. Number one, it'll do what it's supposed to. It'll cool. 2, it doesn't know what it's on. So before anybody gives me crap about it being a fan off a Chevrolet, number 3, and most importantly, is I don't care. So that will work. That will make the cooling system function. We have, a braking system that is this close to being functional. We have the metal work that is almost done. A little more metal work to do. We just got to put the tank under the back of it, run fuel lines. I can't express how close this thing is to actually being running and driving down the road. It is very, very close. But I'm gonna make this a shorter video because at the end of the day, I do have to run to town and get parts, and it looked like a great place to call it for this one and just keep y'all in the loop on what's going on. But there's 2 things I want to remind everyone of. Number 1, we are doing, if you go back and watch the last video that I put up, cars for kids, Hot Wheels cars for Christmas. We're going to give away all the Hot Wheels cars we can get to all the little children's out there. Boy, girl, I don't care. They're all getting Hot Wheels, as many as we can get. Depending on how many we get as to where we send them. I would like to take them to a local children's home, but I will not do that unless I have enough so that every child can get one. If I can't, maybe we'll do a local school and give them away. But again, I want to make sure all the kids get one. If we can't do that, maybe we'll get them to an organization like Country Center or something along those lines. But we want to do cars for kids, and that requires you to actually donate some cars if you want to. or if you have some laying around, I will put the address in the description. I'll also put an Amazon link to some cheap Hot Wheels that you could buy and just have them drop shipped to that address. No mess, no fuss, no nothing. A cheap way to help kids out for Christmas. Number 2 thing is, if you go to Frizzell Racing on our Facebook page, we have a rifle engine that is just sitting there collecting dust. It's never had oil in it. You watched me build it on this channel, Frizzell Racing on Facebook. There's 40 spots for $40. About half those spots ish have been filled. So there's a lot more spots to go. That'd be a great gift for somebody, but you don't have to take the motor. You can take the motor or you can take the cash payout, whichever one you want. But go over to Frizzell Racing and on Facebook and check out those details. I will also, for convenience, if anybody's doing tune-up stuff on this, I will try to put in a link to like a set of plugs and a link to some wires and things so that you don't have to look those things up. They'll be there. And yeah, hopefully you'll follow along, because I fully intend for the next video you see on this truck for it to be driving out of this shop. It may not go down the road yet, but the next video will be it driving out of this shop. So yeah, y'all stay tuned for this. It's gonna get real good real quick. God bless y'all. I hope the Lord bless you more today than he did yesterday. Y'all please stay tuned. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you have not. It greatly helps me. This stuff is how I make a living. This is how I provide for my family. And the more people that watch, the better provider I can be for my family. So it would greatly appreciate it if you would do that. And yeah, guys, I will see you on the next one.
I'd say it's a nut job.